Well, welcome back to the Clinic Efficiency Podcast, the show where we sit down with operators, founders, and innovators who are building and scaling organizations across health, wellness, and beyond. I'm your host, Donald Weeks, founder and CEO of ClearPath AI, and today's guest is someone I've been looking forward to talking with. John Cerf is the founder and CEO of Core Progression Personal Training, a Denver based operator running 10 plus locations and a training methodology he developed over 2 decades on the floor. John started as a trainer at 23, set himself a 500 location goal, and built the company up the hard way by becoming the CEO the business needed, not just the trainer he was. He's also launched a second company, though. It's called Visualize Technologies, that I think is going to change how the wellness industry sells transformation. John, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, John, you started as a trainer at 23 with 10 plus locations, and later you're running a completely different business than the one you started. Can you walk me through the inflection point where you realized you couldn't keep being the best trainer in the room and the CEO at the same time, and what that actually cost you to give up?
Yeah, I think for me, if one of the books I'd point back, I don't know if you ever read The E-Myth, but I would highly recommend that on every entrepreneur's reading list. And I remember reading it where it's like, oh my gosh, there's a mirror in this book because I'm reading about myself. And, kind of looking at that entrepreneurial myth of, am I working in the business or am I working on the business? Am I someone who is good at some type of task or skill and I've just built a job around it? Or am I actually creating a company or an organization that could run ultimately without me? There wasn't an overnight light bulb moment where I just went from training to not, but I think for me, kind of understanding the trajectory of where I wanted to go and then putting things in place to be able over time to doing that. Because when I first started, how I was paying my bills was being the trainer and seeing clientele, and so I didn't have the flexibility to just cut that to zero and totally pivot into a more of a CEO role. So it was definitely a journey over some years, but kind of getting to that point where it was like, either I need to bring someone else in to do this for the organization and continue doing this component of it, or I need to transition to that, and then kind of was able to get there over a period of time.
Right. Absolutely. Well, on our intro call, you said something that stuck with me. Communication becomes a factorial system, not a linear one. As you add team members and locations, most operators learn that the hard way. What does communication discipline actually look like inside core progress today? And where does it still break down at the seams?
Yeah, and I think younger version of me thought that I was delivering and giving good, effective communication, and realizing that there's multiple components that have to go to that. And so I think it seems simplistic on the outside. Sometimes when you're actually in the trenches for doing it, it doesn't seem as intuitive. But basically, who's doing it? What are they doing? And when do you need it done by? And I tell my team, I'm like, if you've not done all three of those pieces, you've actually not had effective communication. Because it could be something like, hey, Donald, could you do this? In my mind, I'm thinking within the next 10 minutes. Within your mind, you're thinking by the end of the month. Neither one of us is wrong, but that's where communication starts to break down. And so being overly explicit as to when does that task need to be done, and setting those type of expectations, so then there's no misinterpretation or gray area, or, well, I thought you meant Friday, you meant today. And by working on those things, I think it's helped really try and kind of close that gap, as it does become exponential the more people you bring to the organization.
Right. You talked about Willink's extreme ownership
Yeah,
being one of
Jocko
the
Willink.
biggest mindset flips of your career. Yeah, yeah. Um, Going from why am I surrounded by idiots to if they're not doing it right, the problem starts with me. When you actually applied that to your team, what was the first hard conversation it forced you to have with yourself?
Yeah, I think, nobody ever wants to admit they're doing things wrong, or that if something's not working, take that accountability. Because especially as the head and the leader, it's like, man, I do everything the way it's supposed to be. It's everyone else around me. And I think, taking that hard introspective look and realizing it's actually my fault allowed us to get better. And that also then, it allows room for growth. I think when you think that you're operating from hey, I'm doing everything right and perfect, there's not a lot of place to go from there. So creating that
Right.
gap to say, things aren't working the way they want. what do I need to do? How do I need to better communicate? What do I need to do from a training standpoint? Then gives you room to actually problem solve and grow because you've now created space.
Right. Well, I know trainer talent is the backbone of your model, and you said that you get about 35 applicants, I think, on a single ad. But you also said perfect staff doesn't exist. You create it. And your operating mantra is coach them up or coach them out. So what does the core progression training system actually look like? And what's the part of the program that no other gym chain is actually doing?
Yeah, I can't give you all the secret sauce details, but I can kind of give you a high level. We have a methodology that has been tested. We've done over 500,000 training sessions at this point and counting. Very data and scientific backed and based. Using that to kind of come up with a framework that then we can roll out and make sure that whether you've been a trainer for a year or you've been a trainer for 10 years, we wanted to have a
Right.
standardization and to be able to scale an organization, that's what has to happen. Otherwise, I worked with Joe, he was great. I worked with Jim, he wasn't so great. And it creates a lot of inconsistencies from a customer experience. And so having a system and methodology and a framework to then roll out across the entire organization allows us to say, hey, even if they're newer to the industry, they're coming in with a 20-year tried, tested, and true framework that you're going to be able to get. And then, inevitably, as people move in their careers or leave or, get transferred or life takes people all over the place, doesn't feel like there's such big gaps disconnects from an experience standpoint. Oh, I was working with you. Now they don't have to feel like they're starting over. We can continue them on their path of results because we know where they are and where they're headed.
Okay, here's the pivot I wanted to get into. You set a 500 location goal at 23, and somewhere along the way, you rebaselined to 10. Your wife's line on our call, just because you can doesn't mean you should, is one of the more honest things I've heard a scaling founder say. Now, walk me through how that recalibration actually happened and what changed in the business once you stopped chasing the bigger number.
Yeah, I think, really kind of understanding, okay, what is my purpose? And, when you become a husband and a father, those things kind of shift differently. Obviously, at 23 and 24, the world was my oyster and easy to kind of have these really large, I'm going to go conquer everything type thing. And, I think
Right.
it then becomes what does matter most and being able to spend time with the family and being available, at the same time, not that everybody doesn't need resources or money. It gets to a point where I don't know if you've heard this term, it's basically almost like a salary ceiling. Not that you can't earn more, but your lifestyle doesn't incrementally improve above and beyond
Right.
that number. And so you kind of get to the point of, more zeros on the end of whatever bank account that is, isn't actually
Mhm.
translating to more happiness or an improved day to day. And then it becomes at the expense
Right.
of what? And so, I think just kind of looking and having some of those things reframe as to, yes, we're still on a growth trajectory, but not at all costs, and doing it in a way that I can still kind of stay true to more of the core family values that I have and the quality that I want to continue to have in the organization as well.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I know AI is showing up in every corner of wellness ops right now, scheduling, intake, client engagement, lead response. You're using it for after hours lead handling specifically so your team doesn't burn out. Where are you leaning in hardest? And where are you holding the line because you don't want to lose the human side of, hey, how's your dog doing? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think there's definitely efficiencies with it. Like we've been able to have it, kind of almost be a 24/7 secretary type thing to avoid my team from feeling like they need to be on all the time. Sending out some automations or reminders is something that's been helpful that we can put into our CRM system. But like you kind of said, the human touch is the human touch, and I don't want people to ever feel like communication or number of contact points doesn't necessarily mean that they're feeling valued, appreciated, some of those things where thankfully we're not to the level yet that AI is going to have all of the human components just, in place. And so, utilizing it and in that regard, obviously also from some marketing standpoints where, hey, help me craft a 5 page, or 5 series of, email flows that I could send out or, things that maybe would have
Yeah.
taken more time to create and drive efficiencies. The biggest thing is probably the Visualized Technologies company that that I've launched that is using it in a, more visual capacity to try and show people what results could look like, help them go down that path as to, hey, if you've never seen yourself thin or you've never seen yourself with more muscle, or, I would hear a lot of times people, oh, if I just lost 5 pounds, and it's like, where did you come up with that? Maybe actually the look that you want is a little bit more muscle and trying to close that gap because, everything in our world, we get on an instantaneous type of timeline. And this is
Right.
those things where it's like, eat a salad and start walking and doing things to get healthy. You're going to wake up, look in the mirror, and you're going to look the exact same that you do today. So it sometimes gets discouraging or you don't get that positive reinforcement like you do in other aspects of our life. So if we could show you, well, if you kept this up for a month, here's where you could look like. If you kept that up for 3 months, here's what that could look like, to be another external motivator to say, hey, this is the path that you're walking down in the journey and the outcome. Don't give up because you can't see it today, and helping people kind of visualize what that future them could look like.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was my next question was going to be on Visualize Technologies. I know it's a brand new company that you launched, and you told me the core insight is that most people, just like you were just talking about, can't reconcile a future version of themselves they never seen, so they don't commit. Talk to me about what Visualize actually does and why it's not the cartoonish before and after stuff that industries have been doing for 30 years. And
Yeah.
where do you see it going?
Yeah, I mean, it uses the LiDAR. So currently we're only on Apple. We don't have, there's, I think, two versions of Androids that have the technology, but we haven't been able to fully roll it out to all devices. So it's Apple specific.
Right,
But yeah, it's using, the LiDAR, so it's getting measurements within a half inch on the entire body. And what it recreates is it's actually a 3D version of yourself. And so, the initial response we have has been amazing, and we're definitely starting to get some traction. It's only been in the App Store for about a week, so it's one of those where, at the
yeah,
tip of the spear of getting this thing out. And, we have versions that are for just everyday individuals that you can, go onto the App Store, download it yourself. It's going to also give you nutrition plans based off of whatever your goal that you've set for yourself is, as well as
right,
workouts. And so those are things where, we've done a ton of different research to say, hey, if you're wanting to build muscle, you're this weight, you're this height, this is your goal. These are going to be the workouts that are going to help you get there. Here's going to be the diet and recipes that are going to help you get there. Inversely, if you're wanting
right,
to lose weight, same type of thing. Also, targeting, there's a couples package. So the husband and wife wanted to do it, you get that, or a family plan. And then really where I think the most room for potential is, people that are coaches or trainers in the industry where they can kind of do it and have that for their own client base, or fitness facilities. And we're in talks with some, very large outfits for hundreds of gym locations of kind of, this could be something you go in, you're interested, they give you the scan, they can kind of help you walk that journey. And then it would pair
right.
with your trainer. And then you're going to kind of be recording that progress. Makes, your results in real life in 3D. You go to our website, we have hundreds of just, 2D before and after pictures. And I think there is something when you can kind of see yourself in that 3D world. There's a ghost overlay, so you can even show, here's where I was, and then this is how I've changed, and you can see where that is on the outline
Wow.
of your figures.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty incredible what we can do. It, the heart behind it is just, if this helps more people stick with exercise or start with exercise because they can kind of see the finish line in some sense. That was kind of what and how this would drive. And then, there's things out there.
yeah,
They're, $10,000 for the hardware, insanely expensive, very space, cumbersome. And so being able to kind of compete, shrink this to where it's your own cell phone, you can do it. You can do it outside, you can do it inside, you can do it anywhere, to help kind of
yeah,
inspire people. And we have, Visualize Technologies is the parent company. Obviously, fitness was kind of our first low hanging fruit. We're also working on a clothing application where, with the same scan technology, we can show you what, you know, hey, are you a large in that brand? Are you a medium? Are you an extra large? How would those clothes fit on you? Because we have the SKUs of the clothing and we have your exact,
right.
and being able to kind of pair those. And then also working into the plastics and aesthetics. If you got this much Botox or you had this type of procedure, what could that look like? So I see, kind of three different arenas that this could play out in, and we'll see.
Sure. That's awesome. I can see that being a real benefit, like you were saying, for trainers in their gyms to roll it out to their customers. And yeah, it'll get them more involved and hopefully stick to it. So that's really good.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know looking 18 to 24 months out, new location in flight, a couple more markets identified, and visualized technologies just getting off the ground. What does a really good version of this period look like for you? And given how your priorities have shifted since your 20s, what does good not look like anymore? I mean,
Yeah, I think, we have a Oklahoma location coming online in the next month. Obviously, that's kind of the, first and foremost priority. Also continuing to try and roll out, visualize is kind of also right at the forefront. And then, depending on what that nuance looks like, running a location from afar, learning, kind of getting that feedback and figuring that out could open up some more other markets. But I think it's just, trying to line everything up and basically, hey, how does this fit into the purpose versus is this just a passion of mine and am I chasing after things that, you know, they're exciting, but kind of going back to that center and hey, how does this impact, time away from family? What is that going to do from a stress level? And, kind of using that to be more the true North Star and realigning versus just think sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, it just, the world's your oyster and you just want to run. And it's kind of like, okay, let's let's go at a pace that seems realistic, sustainable, and in my orbit keeps everybody on track as well.
yeah, that makes sense. Well, John, I think this has been everything I hoped about with the 500 to 10 pivot, the extreme ownership shift. And by the way, I started reading the book too. That's awesome.
Good.
And visualized technologies are the kind of story that most operators in this space need to hear right now. And I really appreciate your time and openness. And if you don't mind, could you just show a little bit about your application on the Apple phone?
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah.
We'll see how this. So
Oh, yeah.
this is actually one of my staff members that works for me, and you can see
Right.
you can adjust it. I'll show you the timeline morph, and so this is where
Yeah.
hitting the different. There you go, and you can see how he shifts and changes based
Yeah.
off of the when it's subtle, it's not once again cartoonish or that's
Right.
starting and that's where he could be in a year. It's something realistic.
Wow.
And then this shows
Yeah.
the delta of the measurements of where he's starting and where he could be. Um,
Right.
this is where if we do the the two different models, he was wearing similar things. You can see his pants change. We can do that side by side comparison
Wow. Yeah.
to, really look and say, okay, what's
Yeah.
changing? Where is it changing?
Right.
Compare any period and then having, based off of what his goals are, the nutrition.
Yeah.
It was something that we wanted recipes. We could type a recipe in. It'll give us a grocery
Right.
meal plan. Same thing with the workouts. It would show, here's your workouts. Here's what you do on those days.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean,
That's awesome.
pretty crazy to walk around somebody for about a minute with your phone and then there you are.
Right.
So
That is awesome. Yeah. Now, what's the name of the application? Is it just called Visualize or
visualize technologies. Yep.
Visualize Technologies? Okay.
Yeah.
And that you said is now available in Apple Store. All right. Perfect. Yeah,
Yep.
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, we have so many different examples of people where shape, sizes, all the different things, and you can really see, you can see how muscles and
Yeah.
you know, just being an
Yeah.
inspiration to kind of help motivate and show what's coming.
Right. Well, that's awesome.
Thanks.